Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the series of literary criticism. And today we are going to explore the literary criticism of Coleridge, who was a romantic poet mainly, but he has also given us this piece of literary criticism, mainly Biographia Literaria. There are some other texts as well that he has written, which are a bit of his criticism again, but the major text of criticism of Coleridge is Biographia Literaria. Okay, let's start with a bit of detail about Coleridge first. So, Coleridge was born in 1772 and he passed away in 1834. Christ College, he was educated, Jesus College again, Cambridge, but like many of the other writers, he left without a degree. He had a very, very close association with William Wordsworth, who helped initiate Romanticism in England. दोनों का जो text था ये Lyrical Ballads, which was published in 1798, it helped establish this entire movement in literature, Romanticism. Philosophical influence, if we talk about that, he was deeply influenced by German idealism. There was a point of time when they were traveling. Coleridge and Wordsworth, they were traveling and they went to Germany. Coleridge stayed back for a much longer time and he explored, and he was so fascinated that he learned the language. He started translating as well. He was deeply influenced by German idealism, especially Kant, Schelling and Fichte. Major critical work is Biographia Literaria, 1817, please remember. It's a philosophical and literary autobiography. It's both analytical and very thorough. The autobiographical work bhi hai ye, 1817 mein it was published, and it is very, very central to the romantic literary theory. There's another name for it, which is biographical sketches of my literary life and opinions. Yeah. Biographical sketches of my literary life and opinions. That's another name. So it blends autobiography, literary criticism and philosophy. How many total chapters are there? There are 23 chapters. Okay, so it was published. Let's take an overview of this work. 1817, published in 2 volumes, subtitled as Biographical Sketches of My Life, a Literary Life and Opinions. It combines autobiography, philosophy, theory, criticism. This can also be viewed as a response to the preface of Wordsworth's Lyrical Ballads. The last session that we had on literary criticism was preface of Wordsworth's Lyrical Ballads. This can be viewed as a response to that also. So let's look at the structure. I told you 23 chapters it has, and there's also this, it's called Satyraine's Letters Appendix. Along with the 23 chapters. Major theme, what is it? It includes the nature of imagination. What is imagination? What are its kinds? Poetry, he talks about it. He talks about criticism of Wordsworth. They were very good friends, but then they fell out. Their philosophies didn't match at a point of time, and that was one of the reasons that they fell out. And then he talks about his own philosophical development. Okay, so here chapter 1 to 4 are autobiographical. It's an autobiographical narrative. 5 to 13 we have engagement with philosophy, particularly German transcendental idealism. So he talks about that. Germany में जो philosophers थे, he was influenced. He talks about that. 14 to 22 literary theory and criticism, important chapters, wherein he also talks about his major concepts. 22 to 23 there's a detailed analysis of Wordsworth's poetry. So chapter 14 Coleridge's definition of imagination is one of the most important of the chapters. He begins in 13 and he goes on in the chapter 14 as well. So if we look at it chapter wise a little bit, chapter 1 has autobiographical tone and it begins. Coleridge explains how he became a poet, and he talks about it that he became a poet almost by an accident. So he criticizes the prevailing poetic diction, and he talks about his early admiration for Pope, and he talks about his the enthusiasm for metaphysics. Okay, so the key points here in chapter 1 are how his literary journey starts with a very strong interest in poetry and metaphysics. It's setting the tone for his later critique of poetic diction. Chapter 2, he discusses his formal education, particularly the influence of the classics in his life and the influence of metaphysics. He critiques then the education system for ignoring the development of the mind and the character, that it only focuses on this kind of a learning wherein they ignore the character of the person, they ignore the development of the mind. Third chapter, he continues discussing early influences, like he talks about his enthusiasm for Plato, Plotinus, and then he talks about German philosophy. Chapter 4, he introduces the concept of fancy and imagination here, and he defends himself from critics who accused him of obscurity and inconsistency. So यहाँ तक we have this autobiographical narrative. ठीक है. Chapter 5, he praises the poetic ideals of Wordsworth's lyrical ballads, which he co-authored, of course, and he notes the revolutionary shift in poetic diction and subject matter. How things shifted from the early on, whatever was happening in poetry, it has shifted now. He talks about that revolutionary shift. So he acknowledges Wordsworth's originality here and discusses their joint poetic principles. Chapter 6, he goes on to critically analyze Wordsworth's preface and discusses the language of real life theory that Wordsworth had given to us. Okay, so while he supports Wordsworth's ideas in spirit, he critiques the oversimplification of poetic language, that if we oversimplify it, there's no point of it being called poetry. Chapter 7 to 8, it's a very deep critique of Wordsworth's theory, but there is no essential difference between the language of prose and poetry. If you remember, Wordsworth, maybe had talked about this, that there's no essential difference between the language of prose and poetry. He deeply critiques that. So Coleridge defends the uniqueness of poetic language, and he argues that meter is something that distinguishes poetry. So it is different from prose. The language of poetry is different from prose. Chapter 9, it's a pivotal chapter. Coleridge introduces his own theory of imagination and fancy, and he distinguishes between them: primary imagination, secondary imagination, and fancy. So primary imagination, the perception, which is shared by all. Everybody has it. Secondary is artistic, unique to poets. And fancy is very mechanical, it's inferior, it is based on memory. So this is the heart of his poetic theory, Then next chapters 10 to 12, he critiques the mechanical philosophy of John Locke and praises German transcendentalism like Kant, Schelling. And then next chapter 13, he discusses esemplastic power, which is a term that he has coined himself. Okay? So esemplastic power, which meaning shaping power of imagination, basically. So the poet's imagination shapes disparate ideas into artistic unity. 14th, he defends the supernatural elements in his own poetry, and I'll just take you further for a minute. Here, mainly 13, 14 we have his entire theory of imagination. देखो अचानक से नहीं आता. He had been introducing it in the earlier chapters, but then he gives us this distinction between, clearly he gives us this proper distinction between imagination and fancy. And 14 he fully develops the definition of primary, secondary imagination, and he defines fancy as mechanical and inferior. ठीक है. 14th chapter is famous for the suspension of disbelief. So he introduced it while explaining the purpose of supernatural poetry. As I was saying that he defends the supernatural elements in his own poetry. हम सबको पता है कोलरिज में हैं, Ancient Mariner में supernatural elements हैं. Other poems also has supernatural elements. The one that is unfinished also, forgetting the name. But anyway, yeah, there is supernatural elements. So he's defending all of that, and he is contrasting them with Wordsworth's everyday realism. So introduced while explaining the purpose of supernatural poetry in lyrical ballads, he says, कभी-कभी suspend करना भी ज़रूरी है disbelief को. भाई मैं तो नहीं मानती ये सब चीज़ें, ये सब तो बकवास है, ये सब नहीं होता, लॉजिक होना चाहिए. You should have the capability to suspend your disbelief sometimes. So willing suspension of disbelief for the moment, which constitutes a poetic faith. 15 May, and later on he reflects in his criticism of poetry, especially बाद में अगर हम देखेंगे 22 और 23 chapter में. So he elaborates on the relationship between a poet and his audience. 15 or 16 में, good poetry according to Coleridge must balance thought and emotion. So the key points here are that true poetry involves a balance of objective truth and subjective feeling. ठीक है, फिर next chapters में he begins his evaluation of Wordsworth's poetic theory, as we saw earlier. So philosophical again, and explores the role of self-consciousness, morality, spirituality, all of that. 18 to 21 is detailed critique of Wordsworth's views on poetic diction, and it's more critical, later chapters, 20 to 22, more critical than philosophical. He defends even Shakespeare's poetic genius, and he discusses the function of the critic. So criticism should be based on understanding the creative process, not just a product of, not just judging the product, basically. Okay? So 22 is in-depth assessment of Wordsworth's poetry using his own critical standards. And finally, last one offers, 23rd chapter offers final reflection on literature, taste, the moral purpose of poetry. Okay, so this is a bit about the chapters. Okay, जो core concepts हैं बायोग्राफी या लिटरेरिया में, अब हम वहाँ चलते हैं. कोर कॉन्सेप्ट्स जो आपने याद रखने हैं, सबसे पहले है द थ्योरी ऑफ इमेजिनेशन. सो प्राइमरी वर्सेस सेकेंडरी इमेजिनेशन. प्राइमरी इमेजिनेशन इज द लिविंग पावर and prime agent of all human perception. It's everybody has it. Primary imagination. All of us can imagine certain things, spontaneous, unconscious, and common to all. Secondary, it's an echo of the former, coexisting with the conscious will. Okay, it's unique. This is common to all, but this one is unique. Not everybody has it. It is a creative or poetic imagination, and it coexists with the primary one. It reshapes raw experience into art. Let's say there are 5 of us who went to see a waterfall. Everybody can feel that, right? It's common to all of us. That's primary imagination. We can all see, we can all imagine, oh, how beautiful. But then, not all 5 of us will have the power to reshape that experience into art. Maybe some of us might be able to make a painting out of it, imagining it to be in a different light. Some of us may be able to write a poetry on it. That's creative imagination. Fancy is the lower faculty, he says. It's lower than imagination. It's mechanical. It's based on memory. It's not creative. Okay? So imagination dissolves, diffuses, dissipates in order to recreate. Second is organic unity. He talks about it's a literary work, he says, must be an organic whole. Har ek part should support the whole. There shouldn't be any extra part which is not a part of the main plot, which is an extra. Then it will break the organic unity. This was influenced by Aristotle's unity of action, but adapted through romantic individualism, and he emphasized the harmony between content and form. Third is suspension of disbelief. So in poetry, especially supernatural works like Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, readers must willingly suspend disbelief to appreciate the emotional truth. So he coined this phrase, willing suspension of disbelief. Poetic diction and the debate with Wordsworth. So then, Wordsworth partially disagreed with Wordsworth's theory of using language of the common man. He argued that all the language is shaped by imagination, not just rural speech. You can't just pick up the local language and use it. The true language of poetry must be elevated, dignified, and imaginatively charged. So he admired Wordsworth's spiritual and moral strength, but he critiqued his simplification. He also said, anyway, Wordsworth has not followed it throughout his poetic career. So critique of contemporary critics, then he attacked mechanical critics like Jeffrey. He criticized utilitarianism in art, and he valued aesthetic experience, not just moral or didactic functions, but he valued aesthetic experience as well. Next, he talked about the role of the poet. He said, poet is a maker, and he takes that from Greek, poiein, which means to make. Not just a mirror of nature, but he's a maker. He might create new things. So poetry is a reconciliation of opposites, emotion and intellect, form and meaning, emphasizes on individual creativity and spiritual depth. Then his German philosophy, he brought Kant, Kantian and post-Kantian thought to English criticism. He emphasized the mind as active in shaping experience, as opposed to the Lockean passive mind. So, हमने देखा ना that he critiqued Locke's static philosophy, and he was inspired by Kant. Mind as an active. Mind is active in shaping experiences, not passive. That mind is not passive, as Locke had said. So he also borrowed from Schelling's theory of absolute and artistic intuition. He differentiated reason, which is divine, intuitive, and spiritual, from understanding, which is understanding can be logical and mechanical. So reasoning or understanding is different. That's what he differentiated. That was about the major concepts in Biographia Literaria. There are some important critical works, others as well, like Lectures on Shakespeare he had written. He celebrated Shakespeare's organic unity, psychological depth, and moral vision. He rejected neoclassical notions of drama, and he helped elevate Shakespeare's status as the supreme dramatist. Another one is The Friend. It's a periodical that blended criticism, philosophy, and politics. So here he emphasized moral and intellectual reform through literature, how we can reform individuals, how we can morally influence them, intellectually we can reform them. And another work was Aids to Reflection. It's a philosophical and religious reflections that he's talking about. And here also he explores moral imagination, reason, and faith. So these are some other important critical works of Coleridge. Some quotes to remember. The primary imagination I hold to be the living power and primary agent of all human perception. The secondary I consider as an echo of the former. Poetry is the blossom and the fragrance of all human knowledge. The sense of beauty is intuitive and immediate. It does not arise from any comparison of ideas. जो sense of beauty है वो बहुत intuitive है. ये बहुत सुंदर है. How do you say that? That sense. It's intuitive and it's immediate. It does not arise from any comparison of ideas. So it's intuitive. We saw this already, chapter-wise breakdown. So major chapters again, once again, let's revise 13 and 14 for theory of imagination. He introduces in the 13th and fully develops in the 14th chapter. Earlier when I said like on the 9th and 10th chapter, see, he had not fully developed his theory of imagination till then. He might have somewhere mentioned about it, but he fully develops his concept here in chapter 13 and 14. 14 May he develops it fully. Suspension of disbelief, 14. Organic unity 15, and then he goes on in 22-23 as well. Critique of Wordsworth's poetic theory from 17 to 22. Eventually, gradually, he does that. And 22 is again in-depth assessment of Wordsworth's poetry using his own critical standards. Nature and role of poetry and the poet. He talks about that. The role of poetry, role of poet also he talks about. So chapter 14, 15 में. And then he implied throughout chapters 17 to 23. So he discusses कि किस तरह से poetry reconciles the opposites. The poet as a creator with secondary imagination. Fancy versus imagination, 13 में we already saw this. Then unity, form and aesthetic judgment, chapter 15. Aesthetics rooted in Kant and German idealistic philosophy. He introduces the idea that beauty arises from unity in variety. And philosophical foundations, the German thought, Kant, Schelling, 5 to 13 mein idhar udhar he has mentioned. It traces Coleridge's intellectual journey and present his engagement with journal transcendental philosophy. This is about Coleridge's Biographia Literaria and some other important works of his. I hope it is clear. You don't have to go into extreme details. Just look at the key concepts, look at the dates, and look at the chapters. Okay, which chapter he has spoken about his key concept. I hope you've understood. Anything you don't understand, please let me know through comments, or you can get in touch with me on Telegram. Telegram mein you can search for Lit Up with Annie. You will find my group. Main group you can search for NTA English Preparation. Just search as I have written, you will find my group. NTA capital E capital P small Preparation. That's my main group. And once again, I've already begun with the test series. So if you are appearing in June 2025 exam, you can join my test series. It's topic wise. I give topic to prepare and I give advanced level MCQs. We practice it almost daily, and on Sundays we have a bigger session of test which is oral, and eventually in a few days we are going to begin with mock tests as well, which will be full length for paper 2 right now. So if you are interested in joining, get in touch with me. The details are in the description box. Please share the session, like the session, comment your thoughts, and if you haven't yet subscribed, please do that as well. I'll see you in the next session, and bye-bye. If you haven't completed till here the criticism, please do it quickly.